Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners.
For artists that want to follow a realistic style, I don't know that you necessarily have to overthink about an influence like me or any other painter who does realism. You can certainly get a lot from the pieces that we've done, maybe even imitate some of those compositions, but I think you'll find your own way once you're just studying reality, which is what I would do. I mean, if I'm going to look at people, things, photographs, it's beneficial to start shooting your own if you can get into that. And these days, since everybody's got a camera, that's not so much of an issue anymore. Being able to study life as the basis for something is the best. I had the longest problem of thinking I needed to have everybody and every element be perfect before I could use it as a reference source. And so it took me a long time to realize how flexible the basis of the human form is. I've posed for myself on loads of paintings where now I guess I'm called out by some people online. It's a process of getting your mind comfortable with what you're building off of. And at a certain point, I would say accept that you're going to feel like you're not seeing it until you've seen it. You know, that maybe you do need to have a thing look like a thing exactly before you're painting from it.
Welcome back, everybody. Time again for another Word Balloon Live, the comic book conversation show. Jon Tsuei here. I'm happy to welcome Jon Tsuei to Word Balloon. Good to see you, John.
Hey, good to see you too, John.
Well, congratulations. I'm very excited. New Aftershock book coming out next Wednesday, the 8th, and that is The Search for Who.
Yeah.
And yeah, pretty cool, man. You were kind enough to send me an advanced issue, and truly, yeah, everyone knows Aftershock, one of my sponsors, but honestly, loved it. Loved this first issue. Very excited to follow this story.
Awesome. I'm glad that you liked it. It's been a ton of fun to write, and the creative team, co-writing this, co-created it with Steve Orlando, which I'm sure many of your listeners know. And on art, we got Rubin and colorist DC Alonso. So it's quite a great team that we got together, and it's a lot of fun working on this.
So tell me how the concept was created.
Yeah, Steve just kind of messaged me out of the blue one day and was like, "Hey, I got this crazy idea about merging Jewish culture and Chinese culture together." And at first, like it was kind of all like laughs. I mean, I know he was serious about doing something together, but I think it started more as more like a nod to the whole blaxploitation era and that type of stuff, So the vibe initially was very different. And then we started to do some research and found that there in fact are ties between the Jewish culture and Chinese culture, specifically Jewish people, refugees who were escaping the Russian Revolution, ended up in China. And they ended up in China, and which is crazy to me. I've never heard of that before. And it wasn't until we started diving in, I was like, whoa, we're like, this is a real thing. It's like you happened on something that actually happened. So as we kind of started to do more of the deep diving into the research, we started to kind of see bits of the story there, and just kind of how the main character, Aaron Sees, is American, Chinese American, is actually unaware of his Jewish heritage. So we kind of ran with that, and it was just we just ran with it and came up with this kind of like revenge tale, wrapped up in a lot of like action thriller tropes, but it's fun. It's fast paced. It's explores a bit about the connections between Chinese and Jewish people. But it's just a fun, like kind of high octane action story.
We start off in a war setting, and that kind of explains Aaron's, to put it in. God, now I'm blanking. I was going to be clever and point out that stupid movie with Qui-Gon, the Star Wars Jedi, Liam Neeson.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, those stupid movies of his special skills.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm an idiot.
The Taken series.
But yeah, he's so Aaron is in. I'm assuming, is that Afghanistan? What war is he serving in?
Yeah, we kind of picture, since the story is taking place in modern day, so we figured that he was actually in Afghanistan at some point. Yeah.
Okay, and he and his best friend MK, which by the way I love that these are two friends. MK is a woman. Yeah. They are soldiers together. He comes home, finds out about his insane past, and I mean his parents running. And I can relate to this because my dad had a bar and grill, and all of a sudden somebody. Yeah, I mean, is that too much? Should I stop? I don't want to spoil.
No.
Okay.
It's pretty much right in the beginning of the book, so go for it.
Yeah, the parents get gunned down in like what looks like a gangland shooting, and it turns out to be this family grudge that goes back to China and the mother's life in China, and Aaron's not going to stand for it. They're both like, dad's mortally wounded, mom survives, but obviously trauma, and how many more attacks are coming? So Aaron decides to take matters in his own hands, and we got a great, exciting beginning to this cool action adventure that Chinese mob. Now I know Yakuza is Japanese, so what is there a term for the Chinese mob other than the Chinese mob?
I think the most well-known would probably be Triad, but those are very specific. Sure. Yeah, that's very specific to Hong Kong, and some of the organizations there was considered Triad. So I guess this I would classify them more just as a crime family,
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
No, and it's great, man. And so beyond the story, is it like 25 pages, your first chapter? It's definitely more than 20 pages.
I think we're on 24 pages for the first one. Yeah, so we went a little bit over. Yeah.
But also, I love the back matter because you really get inside Aaron's head. And you're introduced to a lot of characters. We will see Aaron in the first issue go to China, have his first encounters and stuff. But I do kind of love the choice of giving us an opportunity to really know these characters through Aaron's eyes.
Yeah, we created a pretty in-depth backstory that I don't think we will get to explore all of it. I built a timeline going all the way back from the first his Jewish ancestors when they first arrived into China. So I actually have this whole timeline of when everybody was born and what was going on in China at the time, because it happens. I guess it would be late 19th century. And then, ultimately, they're there all the way through World War II, which would be Japanese invasion in China. So I had all these things kind of mapped out. I kind of went overboard on that, but it was fun. So we actually have backstories for all these characters, in-depth family tree of the family. So in order to kind of get some of that in there, because we aren't able to explore all of it, we did some back matter to kind of give people a little bit of history.
I think it's a great idea, man. I really do, and I thought again it just really helped contextualize the story that much more. And I think the action is great. Your artist's name again? Forgive me.
He goes by Rubin.
Yeah, beautiful stuff, man. Now, did he do this? This is the red, kind of first page. But it's also one of the covers. It's the main cover, I assume.
Yeah, that's all him. With I believe the colors are done by DC Alonso on the covers. Okay. But yeah, Rubin was our top choice when we were kind of, once we got the green light at Aftershock, we were on the hunt for an artist, and when we were looking through different art samples, Rabin jumped out at me right away. I was like, whoa! I was like, his work looks unlike anything that we're seeing in, at least in the Western comics, right? His style, especially if readers ever get a chance to see his black and white work,
Cool.
there's a great charm to his work, and it's fluid. His storytelling's great. So working with him is been a joy for sure.
That's great, man. And no, I love being introduced to international artists this way, and then
Yeah.
following them to their own work that, either by themselves or other collaborators and stuff. So, I mean, Eduardo Risso immediately comes to mind. I mean, it's just been a joy kind of reading his stuff beyond what he puts out in America and stuff. That's great. And again, really exciting story. I think clear defined roles for these characters. MK again is kind of Aaron's wingman. But again, as opposed to just another guy or whatever, it's cool that she's there. Well, now she's Korean, correct?
She's Korean. Yeah. She's Korean. And so in the first issue, Aaron actually meets up with her in Seoul, Korea, and then they take a ferry over to China, which the ferry actually exists. It's a very long trip. We kind of
really
breeze through it really quickly, but I believe it's something like a 15-hour ferry ride or something like that. And so it's a long trip. But MK, I like writing MK a lot. She kind of gets to be that person that keeps Aaron on the straight and narrow, like reminding him why he's there. And as he starts to stray and maybe fall into deep with this crime family, she's always there to remind him, like, hey, you came here not to become a gangster. You came here to get revenge, right?
Well, and mom wants nothing but peace, and obviously is worried about her kid. And no, I think it's very truly educational in terms of all of that, and also even the idea that they start in Korea and then go over to China on the ferry and everything.
Yeah.
So all right, Quentin January saying hey, very cool, excellent. And I love that we got a comment already from Brazil. That's wonderful to see.
Awesome.
Hey, man, no, truly. And this is, and again, everybody knows Aftershock, one of my sponsors. But one of the reasons why I'm really happy about Aftershock is this is the kind of book that they do well. They do supernatural well. They do crime very well. He had Steve, obviously, himself. He's done a few superhero things over there as well. But I'm always excited about a good crime book. And great start, man, truly. I'm very excited for this book. And 6 issues or 5?
We're doing 5.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, we're actually all done on the writing side. So it's just it's up to our team now. But yeah, it's been a great ride, a lot of fun, and I really hope that readers enjoy it too, because it's been so much fun to write, and it really is an opportunity, I think, because most of this takes place in China. It's an opportunity for me to kind of explore my own heritage and kind of talk about that. Because actually where the story takes place is Dalian, China, and that's actually where my mom's side of the family is from.
Wow.
So they originated there, and Dalian has a very interesting history itself. Is that at one point it was leased to Russia as a port city. So the name Dalian is actually a rough transliteration of a Russian word.
Wow.
So they actually have this whole Russian quarter that we show very briefly in the story, but they have Russian houses there. They have, and it's funny because my grandfather, growing up, he ate Russian food. So even as an adult, he had a taste for things like borscht and all this kind of stuff, which I didn't understand it until I dug into the history, right? Because I'm just like, how is he even aware, right? I understand that Dalian is not far from Russia, but I didn't understand that there was such a mixed culture.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so it was funny when I really dug into it. I was like, no, now I understand. Digging into the history of the place helped me kind of even understand my family a little bit better, right? So it's been a fun exploration of heritage, but at the same time, exploration of story. So it's been great.
I get it, man, and truly, I mean, I was telling you before we started recording that. My family is Greek American, and my grandfather came over in the 1890s, and it's great to see the immigrant experience in your story from a completely different perspective in terms of fleeing Russia and going to China. And
Yeah.
that's and I don't know how much of it, as you say, you're telling a modern story, but obviously this is an old family grudge. So I don't know how far back you're going to go in terms of mixing the Russian and the Chinese culture.
Yeah, we explore it a little bit. There's obviously going to be some confrontations between the sides of the families that are fighting, and then there we kind of go more in depth about what caused this break in the family. So we do get some exploration of the Russian side along with the Chinese side. If we were to ever do a follow up to this series, Steve really wants to kind of explore the Russian Jewish side a little bit more, which I think would be awesome. We'll see how this one does, and then maybe in the future we get to dive in a little bit deeper and tell the other side of the story too.
And really, I don't know what the situation currently is in China in terms of what kind of mob influence there might still be. But I know, again, with my dad and my grandparents and stuff coming to Chicago, and I mean, there was just this way that immigrants got things done, and a lot of it was under the table. And I mean, that's putting it in some ways nicely, but also to the extreme of violence and everything that you're exploring in your story. And I think that's great because it puts a new spin on a familiar trope. I mean, again, people like us, we've grown up, we watch the Godfather movies, we see that kind of immigrant experience from the Italian American perspective. But this is great to get the Russo-China kind of perspective and that kind of immigrant story. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, I grew up in my earliest years were spent in Chinatown in San Francisco during the 80s when actually the gangs were still around before they all kind of vanished. And my parents had a restaurant there, and some of our regular customers were actually gang members, so
Sure.
And it was very interesting because they were actually quite kind to my family. There were times when the territory battles between them got really bad, and other gangs were kind of invading the territory and robbing business owners at like after hours, right? Because a lot of business owners were leaving the businesses with bulks of cash, right?
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
So what ended up happening was that the gangsters that were regular customers, whereas they were meeting my mom at night, and one of the bosses, he was there with a bunch of his guys, and all of his guys were all strapped and carrying. You didn't see it, but they were ready just in case. They were making sure they would walk into her car, make sure that she gets home, and leave safely. So the kind of gang culture and that gang vibe is not something that I'm unfamiliar with. Even when the gangs were kind of shut down in San Francisco, that kind of culture still persisted with young Chinese Americans like myself, and just Asian Americans in general. I felt like that grew up around the era that I grew up in. There was this kind of it was territorial. You didn't go to parts of the city that you weren't familiar with alone, because you'd just be asking for trouble if you did.
Sure.
You always made sure you met up with your friends before you went anywhere. And there was just kind of this mentality of like, you protect yourself, protect your own. And that's kind of what I grew up with, so putting that vibe and that culture into the book was just kind of like just drawing from what I experienced growing up,
Absolutely, man. No, that's again, sadly, the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Yeah.
And you'll forgive me about, throwing in my family story and everything. But my grandmother on my mom's side, she became a widow very young, and she was in a big gangster neighborhood, and they all looked out for her.
Yeah.
She was a local merchant. Like you said, she had 3 kids, and they protected her. And I mean, in fact, there was a giant, like almost conference table in the kitchen area. It was like a bodega. She made sandwiches, but mostly, dry goods, cereal, groceries and stuff. And we were not allowed to put any supplies on the conference table. And my older cousin asked her and said, Grandma, what's the deal with the table? She's like, well, when the boys need to have a meeting, they come back here because they know it's safe. And we're like, you're kidding. And she's like, oh, no. And then we were watching a crime story about Tony Accardo, one of the big mob bosses of Chicago. And she's like, I remember when Tony was a kid and he was breaking into somebody's car right on the street. And I'm like, Tony Accardo, what are you doing? And he's like, hey, it's okay, Ann. Don't worry about it. Everything's fine. Okay. it's like those are grandma's stories. What are you gonna do, man? So no,
Yeah.
yep. And again, this is stuff in the 30s and the 40s that she was telling us back in the 90s. And we're like, what? So I can
That's
relate.
hilarious.
No, but
Yeah,
again, but that's what's awesome, man. You're really in, at least from American perspective, I think uncovered territory where again, taking these tropes and making them new.
yeah. I think for like my mom, your grandmother growing up in a time where this stuff was just a part of life,
Right.
It wasn't that they were bad people or anything. It just existed around them, and you had to survive. My family was one of the lucky ones where we actually got looked out for. Right, a lot of people are unfortunate and it didn't have that,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
were targets, So
Yes.
I count myself as very lucky that we were looked out for, and but it was just a part of life,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
I feel like where we are in society now, obviously that it still exists, but it's not. I don't think you see that commingling as much as we did before, right? Like
Agreed.
it's more hidden than it used to be. I felt like at least when I grew up in the '80s, it was quite brazen. It's in Chinatown. You would walk by a place and a gang's like their headquarters. I mean, the name of the gang is painted on the side of the wall, like it's very
tagged
brazen.
or basically like
Yeah,
graffiti tagged or
like
whatever.
it was like a mural actually. It was like they
Okay,
got
sure.
like a professional to come in, or they will have signs made, and they will just say straight up like who they are, what this place is, and
Yep.
there was no hiding it,
Yes.
and everybody knew it was there. So I think bringing that kind of stuff to the forefront and kind of trying to weave it into our modern day culture was an interesting challenge, and it was actually a lot of fun.
I understand, man. Well, again, I think you're off to a great start. People
Thank
could
you.
pick up that first issue next Wednesday, the 8th.
Yeah.
And here's some other alternate covers that I love. So is that David Mack?
Yes, that's David Mack.
You can tell from the lettering, I think, but of course the art as well. So that's cool, and I'm glad that you guys got David to help out and everything. Who's this cover?
That's a good question. I don't know. Actually, that's my first time seeing this one.
Oh, okay.
I don't know who the artist is on that one. It looks great though. Whoever
It looks
it is,
great.
amazing.
And here's another great one. Is that Dave Johnson or?
That's Dave Johnson. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. That's terrific. Sometimes you can tell from the design. So yeah, these are covers, but I promise you the interiors are great as well. I'm sorry I don't have the opportunity to show pages, but I thought the covers were excellent. I'm really curious about, and forgive me because I wasn't aware of some of your other books, like Sarah and the Royal Stars. This is a cool little fantasy story that you put out a year and a half ago or so.
Yeah, about a year and a half ago, published by Vault. There's 2 volumes of it, so if if people want to check it out, it's 2 trade paperbacks out there. It ran for a total of 10 issues.
Cool.
And it's just it's fantasy stories inspired by Persian mythology. So it's and the artist on that was Audrey Mock, colorist is Raul Angulo, and letter by Jim Campbell. Great team that I work with. A lot of fun telling that story. That one is quite different than you'll see in Search for Who, because I wanted Sarah and the Royal Stars to really feel like you're reading mythology as opposed to just a traditional comic. So the pacing of it, I feel like, is very different than what you would see in most comics that are out in the, at least in the West. But I had a ton of fun doing it. It's about Sarah. She's the princess of a nation called Parsa. They're going through an extreme drought. And they find out the reason why it's happening is because the 4 royal stars are actually bound, and they're unable to return to their rightful place in the sky. So her quest is to free these 4 stars, the spirits of these stars, and ultimately defeat the people who put this spell on them. So she kind of ventures all around this different fantastical places. She goes to the underworld. She goes, all throughout what's inspired by Persia. So a lot of areas that are near Persia. But yeah, that was a really fun story to tell too. I really like that one. I hope people like it too if they check it out.
That's awesome. I just talked to Henry Barajas, and he mixed kind of Dungeons and Dragons kind of storytelling with Aztec mythology.
Oh,
and
awesome.
and so no, again, I mean that is the great thing. And I say this again as someone from who loved not only Greek mythology but Norse mythology. There's an entire world of like incredibly untapped mythology that I think a lot of modern writers can really tell some interesting stories with. So why not? And it's just more variety.
Yeah, I do like that we as storytellers are getting the opportunity to explore more now. That publishers like Vault are willing to take a risk, right? Because it is risky to do something that is completely
Sure.
unfamiliar, right?
Yeah, pretty narrow.
So I'm thankful that we're at a place now where we get to see so many different types of stories that are inspired by so many different cultures around the world. It's great. You really allow people a chance, like you said, to tap into something that is new to us. But also, you get to tell these stories from a perspective that maybe we're not used to seeing or hearing. So it's been great. Yeah,
no,
it's a great
definitely.
time.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I'm really glad that a lot of the smart comic publishers are counter programming rather than they just really seemed, especially in the 90s, that, and we had exceptions to this, but there was a lot of inclination of, well, this is my superhero story, and I can appreciate that, and someone still may have something different to say within the superhero genre, but it's like, thank God. I mean, truly, that's what brought me back to comics 20 plus years ago in the very late 90s, when I'm like, wow, look at all these genres that are getting respect and are being, served well by good storytellers. And it's a great new variety that, it was tough to find the exceptions to superhero stuff when I was growing up. And now it's like, no, it truly is. I agree with everyone else where it's a new golden age. And I do think there's good opportunity there. So.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm thankful for the guys who kind of came after that Image era, who really pushed the boundaries in comics, guys like Bendis, Brubaker, who were telling these stories that, we hadn't seen crime comics in quite a while, like really take a major stance in comics for a long time. And crime used to be a huge deal in comics, right? And then it just
absolutely
superheroes kind of eventually crushed everything, right? And everything just kind of went to the wayside. But guys like Brubaker and Bendis and from that era of Image Comics, I feel like really pushed the envelope and allowed for new stories, different genres to exist in the space. And where we are now, it's an evolution of that. But I think they really kicked down some doors for us to be able to tell these other stories.
Obviously, John, you were pushing from the creative side to be able to tell your stories. Do you think it was a combination of readership and creatives widening opportunities where they are today? I mean, because again, I started Warballoon in 2005, and remember when we could count on one hand the female writers that were very active at that point. It's gotten better. It seems like, and I mean, of course, there's always been, from Japan, manga, and even Chinese and Korean comics as well. But it does seem like there is a new awareness, or at least an opportunity, that there is a bigger opportunity now for more voices to step up. And do you think it was just a combination? What do you think's been happening?
That's a good question. I mean, I think you definitely get some publishers who are pushing against the trends, right? People like Aftershock, people like Vault, and obviously Image has opened the doors for people that from different cultural backgrounds, or even different marginalized groups or gender identities to really express these ideas.
Yes.
And I think the readership has also grown. Even with like the prevalence of things like webcomics, and just things like webtoons and tapas, right? And those came from South Korea, right? Where
that's right. Yes, sir.
It's the trend to read on your cell phone. It made it very easy access. So it made sense that it caught on in the West, that we start to see more webcomics, that people who didn't even know physical comic book stores existed could find their story fixes online, right? And now there's a whole platforms for that. So I think it's definitely opening the doors, and the book market has embraced graphic novels, so I mean, and we see that in the sales figures, right? I mean,
Yep.
the monthly print comics don't do nearly as much as the stuff being published by traditional book publishers.
You're right.
So I think the audience has grown, and the creators it's opened up for new creators, people with a different perspective. So I think it's a combination of all those things coming together at a great time. It's a great time to be a creator. It's a great time to be a reader of comics, because there's so much to choose from now.
Yes, it's never been more crowded on the virtual shelf when you include web comics and things like that, and like you said, webtoons and tapas, and also these other platforms like Panel Syndicate, where Marcus Martin and Brubaker have been doing stuff, and others as well. Alex DeCampi, I know, is a Panel Syndicate creator. Have you thought about the webtoons, tapas, other beyond the direct market publishing for your stories?
Yeah, I had thought about it. Sarah and the Royal Stars actually did end up on Tapas. Vault had a deal with Tapas where they took a lot of their titles and put it on their platform. And it was really interesting looking at because it's a vertical scroll.
I was going to ask, absolutely, man. Yeah, because the panel sequence changes when you're scrolling rather than reading a page. So sure.
So you can definitely tell that Sarah wasn't made for the vertical scroll platform. So it's at times it's a little bit of a rough transition. But it was really interesting because I feel like the audience is just a very different audience from people who are into like direct market books.
Sure.
So I definitely have thought about it. I think it's something that I would explore in the future. But I'm also like a very loyal person. So like Vault taking a chance on me, Aftershock taking a chance on me, I kind of feel a sense of loyalty to them too, where, they're willing to give me a platform to tell these stories. I kind of want to make sure that I shoot them my pitches and all that too, and just kind of like, they invested in me and I'm invested in them too,
That's awesome. In your bio for Search for Who, you mentioned that you did some work at Bitch Planet, and Ed wanted to know about the Bitch Planet project from your perspective and any possible future plans in Delandro and Kelly Sue's Bitch Planet world.
Yeah, it was very cool because it was Val approached me. I forgot which convention we're at, but he asked me if I would be interested. I know Val and Kelly Sue because I had a book, I have an image called One Love Kills. So we had.
I'm going to get to that. So yes, I'm glad you mentioned it. Absolutely, man.
So we were at the same Image Expo is where we met. And yeah, they just kind of approached me, asked me if I'd be interested. Of course, I was interested, and they basically just gave me free reign to tell whatever story I wanted. And at the time of my writing, I had been talking to a lot of my friends who are actors of Asian descent, and they were kind of telling me stories about some of the difficulty that they have landing gigs and some of the bad stereotypes that get thrown on them, and just like the things that they were asked to do as Asian people playing these roles were typically to embody stereotypes, and the kind of like anger that they had around that, but at the same time, it's a job that puts food on the table, right? It's this really rock and hard place for them,
Totally.
So that's kind of what the story was centered around. I was really inspired by my friends. I just kind of wanted to approach it and tackle it head on, but also do it in a way that is true to the Bitch Planet form of like, this kind of satire, but it's almost like an angry satire, Yes, the vibe of Bitch Planet. So I wanted to kind of go in there and just, tell a little bit about the struggles that, Asian people do face. And I thought it was a great platform for that. And Kelly Sue and Val were very encouraging, like, yeah, go for it, do that, So it was a great experience. I don't know that I would do anything again in the future because I don't know if they have plans for it. I mean, it's Kelly Sue and Val's lane. But if they were to ever ask me again, I'd be more than happy jump back in there.
I love them both. They're amazing
Yeah.
people, and doesn't surprise me, knowing Kel like I do, that she's like, yeah, go. I mean, that's just like a hallmark of all her stuff. And man, I always say this. I felt so bad because for years, Val's one of the warmest guys I've ever met in comics, and such a decent, good guy, and beautiful art. And he was doing X-Men books, and I don't know, man. I just can't help it. I'm not a big X-Men guy, and I'd have him on, but I'd be like, oh, Val, please. I'm like, the day will come, Val, where you're not doing an X-Men book, and I can even gush more about how much I love your stuff. And lo and behold, Bitch Planet happens, and I'm like, so thank God. Oh, that's funny. Ed wanted to know, I guess your story's title was Mirror, Mirror, and he wondered if you're a Star Trek fan. Dangerous territory, John.
I do like Star Trek. I'm not very well versed in it, but Jean-Luc Picard is I absolutely love Patrick Stewart, and especially in the world of Picard. I actually didn't pick Mirror, Mirror. I'm not great at titles, so it was just one of those I just kind of threw out there, like maybe Mirror, Mirror, and I threw a bunch of different ones, and that was the one that kind of stuck. So it wasn't a direct nod to Star Trek, excuse me.
No problem.
But yeah, now that you mention it, I'm like, oh, okay, I should have saw that one, but it wasn't a direct nod, unintentional.
That's awesome. And now, before we get to your Image book, while we're on the subject, as you say, you're friends with a bunch of Asian actors and stuff.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it in your Twitter feed. If it was today or earlier last week or whenever you posted this great 6-minute BBC television short that really talked about how Asian culture is portrayed in a lot of dystopian sci-fi future films, from Blade Runner to Cloud Atlas and the like. So I'm really glad you made me aware of that, because it was really interesting to watch. And if you got a minute to expand on that, I'd be interested to hear what you think.
Yeah, it's interesting if you look at Hollywood films and even television, right, that incorporates any kind of Asian culture in it. Typically, has to do with a lot of the aesthetics of Asian cultures, sometimes the food, but very rarely do you ever see Asian people in these stories, right? It's almost as, it feels like it's set dressing, that it's in order to make this world seem a little bit more interesting. It's like, oh, we got video geishas in the background, right? Or in the case of something like Firefly, right, where the characters will curse at people in Mandarin in their very broken Chinese, right? But you don't actually see Asian people with any speaking lines in Firefly. You don't see them with any maybe a few very small speaking lines in Blade Runner.
Yeah.
That's about it, right? So that's always kind of been an issue, and it's something that I've actually thought about quite a bit, and it actually turned into a pitch for a comic that's going to be coming out through Vault, called Fox and Hare, which is a cyberpunk story, but it kind of it embraces all of the Asian aesthetics and that kind of world building that they use, but it puts Asian characters at the forefront. And I thought about it, and it's like, was it enough to just put Asian characters in the forefront? I felt like I needed to also put themes that affect Asian people as well. So one of the backdrops for Fox and Hare is that it's a city that is actually controlled by foreign powers as a result of colonialism. So it kind of deals with the colonialist aspect, and it's kind of my way of pushing back against what we've seen in cyberpunk, in sci-fi, these kind of dystopian worlds. I'm writing it, and Stacey Lee is drawing it. Stacey Lee from Marvel's Silk. So that was purposeful too, was to find a co-creator that is also Asian, and allow us to kind of take back a little bit, right? That's and tell our side of the story, essentially. So I mean, definitely
exciting.
Check out my Twitter feed and check out the video. It does a much better job of explaining it than I did. But it's that, knowing that you could kind of understand where I'm coming from when it comes to Fox and Hare when that releases in November this year.
Wonderful, man. Well, you'll have to come back when that's ready to drop, man.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I'd love
No,
to.
definitely, man. So, we're a couple days away from Shang-Chi opening again. And, Shang-Chi, whatever. Sorry. Like we were saying off the air, I think we'll know for sure when the movie comes out, we'll know the correct pronunciation.
Right.
So, but that said, I will confess, especially growing up during the 70s Kung Fu film era and blaxploitation and all of that, I was a massive Shang-Chi fan from day one.
Yeah.
I didn't know, because all my only reference at the time were, and then again, forgive me, but I was a viewer and I was a reader back then. So when it came to Fu Manchu, all I knew were the Christopher Lee movies and the depiction from the Marvel writers and stuff. And didn't realize, and it's so crazy, no lie. A month ago, I'm sitting down with Jim Starlin, one of the co-creators of Shang-Chi, and I'm like, Fu Manchu, and he's like, what racist shit? And I'm like, yeah, I guess so. And I learned, having read a couple of the Sax Romers and stuff, yeah, incredibly racist shit. But like, so again, I mean, on the one hand, there's some really interesting, cool pro-Asian portrayals in the original run of Shang-Chi, but then also there's a lot of not only terrible yellowface stuff, but I mean, Black Jack Tar is always calling him Chinaman and stuff, and so there's rude shit going on along with the positive shit, it seems.
Yeah, it's I think growing up, kind of seeing that stuff, when I was young, I wasn't really aware of the negative portrayals until I got, became probably closer to teenage years and things like that. But what I grew up with was like Jackie Chan movies and Jet Li and things like that. So I always saw like these kung fu action heroes as something positive, right?
Yeah.
And then when I started to kind of dive into things like Shang-Chi, like the older stuff, and I realized that a lot of times this stuff was used, like on the one hand, he's awesome, he's a great fighter and stuff like that, but there's just a lot of racist stuff in there too, right? And I think part of it is a product of the times. I think some people just didn't really know any better. I don't think people went out and tried to be racist. I don't think that was the intention, right? But unfortunately, that's just kind of how it ended up, right? Even the character of Fu Manchu is just kind of this caricature of that stems from the whole yellow peril kind of era.
Yes.
When Chinese immigrants first started arriving in America, they were depicted as predators. Like there's little, you can look it up. There's little drawings of Chinese people chasing white women, and the tagline would be like, keep them away from our women and all this kind of stuff, right? Really just kind of nasty stuff.
Yeah.
And as time went on, it's really interesting because when Chinese Americans first arrived in the United States, they were depicted as predators and, it's kind of evil people. But as time went on, they became more docile in their depiction. They became emasculated in the depiction, right? So it's interesting when you look at these things because how malleable these stereotypes are, right? All it takes is just a concerted effort by a small group of people to go from sexual predator to like emasculated and not a threat, right? And within the span of just maybe a few decades.
Yeah, man. No,
right?
I mean, would you say like Charlie Chan is an emasculated Asian hero? I realize, and again, forgive me, I know that in the films, never played by an Asian, which is insane.
Yeah.
But again, from my perspective, kind of a mixed bag because that's where Victor Sen Young came from and Kay Luke. And I mean, like all his kids were played by Asian actors, and it was like their first opportunities to kind of show what they could do. Yeah,
I think Charlie Chan maybe is not emasculated, but he's not threatening, right? And I feel like that.
Agreed.
I feel like that seems even now that seems to be kind of the mode that Hollywood likes to operate in, whereas that you have when an Asian man is at the forefront, they usually play these very non-threatening, non-sexual type of roles, right? And I'm not going to throw any actors under the bus, but you see some actors have made a career out of that. I feel like a movie like Crazy Rich Asians pushed back on that really, really hard, right? Because all the men were really, really good looking, and
Yeah.
they're all like really, really fit guys. They're just pretty much all of them had their shirts off throughout the movie.
A lot of good looking women in that movie as well.
Yeah, great. Just the entire cast is just filled with good looking
beautiful people,
right?
Absolutely,
beautiful
man.
people. But it was
and great actors too. I mean, my God, Jesus, shame on me. And I love because I really love Crouching Tiger.
Michelle Yeoh.
Yeah, Michelle Yeoh. Good, God damn, man, she's amazing. She's amazing. Yeah, right? And it's so awesome that she's still like incredible as she's approaching her senior years and it's stuff.
Yeah,
still. I mean, because even as much as I tear my hair out in Star Trek fan frustration with Discovery, I love Michelle Yeoh. I'm very happy she's there. I'm glad she's as capable as Jackie Chan has been as he approaches his middle age. So it's so awesome that she's still a badass and everything. And again, in Crazy Rich Asians, guess what? I could be awesome just being this matriarch as well.
Yeah, so I feel like a movie like that was really, I think it was disruptive. And
I'm with you.
I think that's what I really like about it. It's
well said.
It's a romantic comedy, so it's kind of follows.
It's safe. Yeah,
it is safe in terms of the construction of it, but there are aspects of it that are unsafe, right? There are aspects of it that are disruptive. So I think seeing that that's what makes me interested in seeing what Marvel will do with Shang-Chi, right? It's kind of like, okay, now that there is some momentum and Crazy Rich Asians prove that there's audience for having Asian people at the front of the camera and having, being the stars of the movie. It's very interesting to see what will happen, and how they approach it. I hope they aren't safe with it. I hope it's not just kind of boilerplate action film. I hope that there is kind of this push to really disrupt what we've seen and challenge the status quo.
I agree. No, and I mean that was one of the things that I was surprised and pleased about with Falcon and the Winter Soldier, bringing in the Isaiah Bradley character from the great Marvel story Truth, and just that whole Tuskegee component that Robert Morales added to the Captain America mythos. And it's like, did not see that coming. Really glad it's there. And yeah, man, I see Shang-Chi as well as a great opportunity. And again, for pure love of the character, no disrespect to Doug Munch and Gene Day and Paul Gulacy. I'm a massive fan of those guys. As you say, I think unfortunately it was just part of the times. I mean, like I said, man, I mean, I grew up every other week. It was either Charlie Chan or it was Sherlock Holmes on Sunday afternoons on Chicago television. And again, my perspective always was, and certainly as I became an adult could appreciate, God, it's a shame an Asian never got a chance to play Charlie Chan. But also I did kind of like that even in the 30s, there was this level of respect from the cops where it's like, Charlie, thank God you're here. We don't know what the hell's going on with this murder. We need you. And I mean, that just always seemed that kind of buddy. And it was usually an Irish guy. Thank God, Charlie, you're here. All right, sit down, help us out. But I did. I mean, again, that's my Ellis Island grandparent kind of background where it's like, God, no lie, man. I did not mention this, but it's the truth. My father grew up above a Chinese laundry, an apartment above a Chinese laundry.
Yeah, well, hopefully, I mean, these things always come back around, right? So hopefully Charlie Chan gets a second chance, right? And maybe
and I'm sorry, I forget Pornsek's last name, but he did the Good Asian for
I know Pornsek. Yeah.
How do I say his last name again? Forgive me.
I'm going to butcher it too because he's Thai and I'm not. So
okay, all right.
I don't want to butcher it.
It's like asking me to pronounce a Lithuanian name or some shit like that. It's like, I know they're really close country wise, but no, I can't do it either, man. No, but I mean, really, I love Good Asian for that reason of taking the tropes and telling the real story instead. So I really, man, I think it's unmined territory for an American audience to really get into. And here, Second Street Marvel wants you to know that he thinks you're awesome. He loves Sarah and the Royal Stars. He's getting ready to sit down to read and review Search for You, and he can't wait for Fox and Hare. Well, I know you're going to enjoy Search for You, man, because, again, I got the advanced look, and I dig it. And, again, everybody, it is coming out next week. But let's talk about Run, Love, Kill from Image. That's another one of your series. and I got the cover right here. There it is.
Cool.
So yeah, obviously there's mechanoids in there and everything, but tell me about Run, Love, Kill. What's the story behind that? Is it Run or it is Run, right? Not Buck.
Run, Love, Kill.
Run, Love, Kill.
Yeah, unfortunately, we actually didn't get a chance to finish this story. It's unfortunately one of the series, this unfinished Image books.
Sure. Hey.
But yeah, it's a sci-fi story about a character named Rein Oshiro, and she is trapped. She's on the run. Excuse me. It's been a while since I've thought about this story, but she's on the run from this corporate group, and she's been hiding out in the city for quite a few years now, and they finally have tracked her down, and she needs to get out of the city before the borders close, and it just kind of follows her with. It's a big action piece. Kind of explores what her past is, her connection to them, and how she was at some point like a military assassin for them, and yeah, but the kicker in this is that there are some kind of like superpowers in there, that people have the ability to actually teleport. And that's the main mode of transportation in this world, is that there are people who are hooked up to these machines that teleport people from place to place. But Rein actually has the ability to do that without any type of machines. So unfortunately, we did 4 issues. We weren't able to do more. But I still have love for the story, and it's for the issues that are out there. If you could get your hands on it, it's a gorgeous ride. It's a lot of fun. So,
well, it looks good, and would you hope to get back to it at some point, or maybe not? Is it moving forward?
Yeah, I think I'm just kind of moving forward at this point. I do have love for that world and the characters, but there's so many stories to tell, so many worlds to explore. So I think it's one of those that I'm glad we did what we did, but I think I'm ready to kind of tell new things.
I understand, absolutely. Yeah. So Fox and Air coming up in November, and again, Search for Who begins next week. And I mean, if you've got your options, I am a big fan of the Dave Johnson cover and the David Mack cover, but this is representing the regular cover for it as well. But no, top to bottom, man, really, really, really cool story. Anything else coming up that you want to promote, or is it not ready for prime time to talk about stuff?
I just had a Star Wars manga come out. It was an adaptation of Greg Rucka's novel, Guardians of the Whills novel. So following the Rogue One characters, Chirrut and Baze. So I got to do an adaptation of that, turn it into a manga form. And that's already out now.
Who publishes that?
It's published by Viz. So Viz Media. So you could get that at bookstores now. And other than that, Search for Who and Fox and Hare are kind of the main things to keep your eye out for.
Sounds good, John. Honestly, great meeting you, and appreciated where our conversation went. And no, you're welcome back when Fox and Hare is ready to drop in November.
I appreciate that.
But man, Search for Who next Wednesday, September 8th from Aftershock. It's again, I love the first issue. I think you absolutely will be sucked in, not only from the story but the back matter as well. So. We're gonna do. I'm gonna tease some other stuff I got coming up. I got. I'm obsessed by Star Trek, whether I like it or hate it. So I'll be talking about the next episode of Lower Decks on Friday with my co-hosts Franco and Mitch, and then Sunday we're going to do our weekly episode of Kinescope about the early days of live television. And I'm really excited about this subject. It's a sci-fi subject. It's America's first original sci-fi television hero, Captain Video. Captain Video was huge. It started in 49. It was a live show. You can see the sets are painted, like just ridiculous. And the gadgets are made from like just grabbing like thimbles and, spools and stuff and sticking them on toy guns and making ray guns out of them. But it was as big as Hopalong Castle. It was on 6 days a week live.
Oh, wow.
That's insane. Cool. And if I don't know if you're a Honeymooners fan or not, John, you're a young man, but there's Ed Norton when he's watching TV, he's watching Captain Video, and it's like one of the great Honeymooners scenes. So that's all coming up. We're going to be doing that on Sunday night at 9:30 Pacific time. But John, thanks a lot for hanging out tonight. I really appreciate it. and continued success, man. No, I think
Thank you.
again, Search for Who is just outstanding. Everybody stay safe.